It's hard to imagine TCU fans being happy about this season, but if there was one way to end on a high note, it requires perfection. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? I am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, host of your favorite daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the country. Thank you for helping us reach that. That's the home team, and we are your team every day. TCU is not in the greatest of spots. We'll talk about the biggest winners and losers, and it really comes down to the state of Utah versus the state of Texas. Sarah Smith is with us as usual, and she has her stat of the week. Also not optimistic, but you know what? If there is a route to happiness at the end of the season, if there is a route after Thanksgiving that says we're happy, I think that it requires perfection. I think that TCU, and when I say TCU, I'm speaking directly to the fans right now. TCU fans are in a place where everything is aggravating. Sonny Dykes gave his comments after the game saying you can say what you want. Absolutely the worst answer you could give. He came out and kind of apologized for that on Tuesday. I haven't given much of a listen to it at this point, just read a little bit. I didn't love the cleanup, though I at least appreciated that he said he didn't think much about his answer before. It feels like everything is frustrating, though, right? Like the wind could blow to the left instead of the right, and people would be pretty upset about that. That's where it feels like everything is headed, rightfully so, from the fan base.
Yeah.
If there was a route to happiness, though, I think it requires you to not only beat Houston, but also beat Cincinnati. I don't think you can go 1-1. If you go 1-1, TCU fans are still going to be upset. If you go 2-0, most TCU fans are probably still going to be upset, but I think that it can at least allow you to end on a high note, especially if you go and win that bowl game. But I don't know. That's my opinion on how happiness is achieved.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too. I like to, pride myself on being a pretty optimistic person, but Saturday's complete failure of a game really just I don't even know how to describe how I was feeling. I actually turned it off probably midway through the third quarter and went to bed because I had just got home from work and I turned it on. Hopefully, at halftime, hoping that TCU was going to do something in the second half, but nope, they kept losing. I think in ending the regular season 8-4, which is how it happened last season, is the best outcome because TCU doesn't want to trend worse. You don't want to have a worse record than you'd had last season. But also demanding perfection out of a football team in order to achieve that is kind of crazy. Like, no, I mean, they're athletes, but they're also human. They're bound to make mistakes. And the fact that we're the only way for them to kind of, I know Cincinnati are kind of kicking a man when they're down. They've dropped a couple games, but I don't know if TCU really has what it takes to win. I saw everyone was kind of blowing up on Twitter about what Sonny Dykes said in that post-game presser. When I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, like that is shocking. And even though he did come out and apologize, I still feel like this is not your first head coaching job. I think you should know better than to say something like that.
Yeah.
Especially when there are already conversations circling about your job, whether or not you are going to remain at TCU for the future. So here, I mean, it's not like I haven't said this. TCU needs a coaching change. They need a culture change, and that comes with Sonny and Riles getting fired. And that's not to say Sonny is a bad coach. I just don't think that he is the right fit for TCU. And going to take them in the direction that they want to go long term. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get it. And let me say this, because we've talked about Sonny a little bit, both you and I, and then also on earlier shows, we've talked about his recent comments. Extremely tone deaf. I saw the walk back, and I'm trying not to react to it too much because I think Steven Johnson tweeted it out, and he said it was about 3 to 4 minutes of talking. And I know what he sent, even that small line. He sent he tweeted, excuse me, a one-liner, and then he tweeted again and gave a little bit more depth. Depending on the tempo in which Sonny spoke, that probably wasn't the whole quote either. So I'm trying to refrain from, going in too much without having all of the context right now. But his conversation or his statement about expectations being raised kind of sat wrong with me. But I'll say this. If Cincinnati beats BYU and then TCU beats Cincinnati, I think that will nothing is going to make people happy. Nothing is going to make people satisfied. The season has already went too far for that. But I think that maybe pitchforks get put away a little bit if Cincinnati is able to beat BYU and then you beat Cincinnati, because then it feels like you have a really good win, and that's not something that TCU has at this point. So if and I texted you this earlier, Sarah, it may just be no way to happiness. Like, we may just have to say that everything that has happened this year, even if they beat Houston, I don't think that moves people. I don't think people are really sold on the Cougars, on those Cougars, right? I don't think that they are. So winning that game would be good because you don't want to lose, but I don't think it's going to make people change their mind about anything. But if you beat Cincinnati, as long as Cincinnati isn't on a 3-game losing streak, that's the other thing. If Cincinnati is on a 3-game losing streak, the win looks a little less impressive. So you still don't feel like you have a major victory.
Honestly, I think any win for TCU would be impressive.
Wow.
By the way that they just haven't been playing great at all.
That's,
to be honest. I think I'm so down in the dumps and I'm so sad that I know there's some comments that I'm a Debbie Downer, and I was just thinking before I hopped on that, oh my gosh, the fans are going to keep thinking that I'm a Debbie Downer. But I think that this is a shared collective Debbie Downer about this team at this point in time.
Yeah, no, I think everybody feels bad. This topic doesn't even exist if the majority of fans aren't feeling bad. And that's why I wanted to say at the beginning, like, this is deserved. Every way that fans are feeling, the frustration, the disappointment, I don't even know if it's heartache at this point, but it feels like the preparation for divorce. Everything that I feel like fans are waiting for, speaking about, anticipating, I think it's earned. I think they deserve to feel that way. So yeah, it is kind of a collective Debbie Downer, so to speak, but it's just realism at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a good way out of it. I'm trying to find there. So let me, ask you straight up. Do you think that there's anything that could happen this season that will make people less angry, less urgent for change? Anything that could happen in the next 2 games plus a bowl game that will make people say, all right, we're not going to campaign for a firing of Sonny Dykes or a campaign for a firing of Kendall Browse, or at least just not sit here and act like the program is diving nose first or head first into the ocean. Like, is there anything that can be done to achieve that feeling?
Like I said earlier, I think winning out, going 8 and having another 8-4 record in the regular season, I would claim as a win, and I would be happy with it. Yes. Because like I was just saying a little bit earlier, you're not trending downwards, you're staying the same with hopes that you can maybe make that a 9-3 next season, or even a 10-2 if we're getting really crazy with it. Yeah. I think that is my version of success, is the 8-4 season with a bowl game W.
Let me ask you this, because I think we're on the same accord, but I want to make sure we're like really completely on the same one. We agree that nothing is going to make people satisfied with the season. That would just make them less angry. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking. The route is, how can you be less angry? Not how can you be happy. I think that ship has sailed. But how can you be less angry? And winning out is the way to do it, and probably also winning a bowl game. We'll see if that's enough to keep Sonny employed. But we're going to move forward because it's time to look at Sarah's stat of the week, in which we break down a surprising failure by TCU's defense, something that we hadn't seen before, but it is something to break down today as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and it doesn't matter what you're into: basketball, football, hockey. When is hockey back now? I don't know. I can't remember. I'm not a hockey head, but whatever it is, FanDuel has you there to be able to make a little bit of extra money. And I think everybody wants that. If you know what's going to happen, if you feel like you know what Dak Prescott is going to do in the next game, you have the Cowboys versus Eagles. That's going to be a big one. You know what the Cowboys, you know what CeeDee Lamb's going to do, what George Pickens is going to do. Are they going to be able to stall out Jalen Hurts? He doesn't throw for many yards anyway. So maybe you want to go with the under when it comes to Hurts yards. It's all up to you. If I were you, though, I would put down a $5 bet that is easy, smooth, and I know I'm going to win because I'll get $300 back in bonus bets if I am a new customer. Unfortunately, I no longer am. You'll want to get to my level where you just keep going to FanDuel every week. And once you do that, go ahead and download the app. Or in order to do that, download the app today and get started. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. It's time for me to shut up. It's time for me to step back and allow Sarah to give her stat of the week. I'm interested in this one because the number comes up yet again, but this time it's not turnovers.
Yes. 3 rushing touchdowns allowed versus BYU. And I think this is what led to TCU's fall against the Cougars. You know, TCU's rush defense that's been something that we have praised on this podcast, that they, looking back from last year, it's drastically improved. And TCU's defense is still ranked 3rd rushing defense in the Big 12. So this performance was pretty shocking to me. And like we've said before, you know, having a strong rushing offense, TCU's now last in that department, unfortunately. Having a strong rushing offense is just the key to success in football, especially in college football. LJ Martin is just an absolute beast. As someone who supports TCU fan, you know, game is game. You kind of have to respect that. He's a dog. They had 3 rushing touchdowns, and TCU kind of looked a little lost out there. And I knew from the very first drive of the game, I knew that it was going to be a long one because they could not stop it. And Bear, he only had 1 passing touchdown, so that's just indicating that pretty much all the points came from BYU's rushing attacks. So I was just really shocked to see our run defense get so exposed. It wasn't a pretty game all around, but that was just very shocking to me.
Before you continue, I want to say I love that you said that Bears' 1 passing touchdown was not indicative of them stopping the pass. It wasn't. It was just the fact that they were doing really good on the run, and that's how they got their points. So I do want to say that is a perfect point, in my opinion. Something that sometimes gets lost, but I'm glad you didn't lose that. Now, TCU's only allowed 9 rushing touchdowns all year. So we're at less than a touchdown a game if you're doing averages. TCU's allowed 9 touchdowns this year. Can I flash this back up, please? 3 came last week. 3 came last week. And when you really get into it, you have 1 against North Carolina, 1 against North Carolina, 1 against Abilene Christian, 1 versus Arizona State, 1 versus Colorado, 1 versus Baylor. That's a lot of ones. That's a lot of ones. This is the only game in which they have allowed multiple rushing touchdowns. Now, it also came against the best running back that they're going to face this year. So there's that. And it's not a surprise, in my opinion. I knew that TCU was going to be fighting an uphill battle. I knew that defeating BYU meant stopping LJ Martin. And I knew a healthy LJ Martin was going to be tough to defend. I do not believe that this is an indictment on who the run defense is. I think what we saw the previous 9 games is more of an indication of who they are. But even good run defenses get beat. And they got beat this time. And that's the way that I view it. Not a season-wide, doesn't erase anything. This was the worst game by the defense. It doesn't erase everything we saw from them, though. And I'm not saying that that's what you're saying, but
no, I'm not over here being like, oh my gosh, our defense is so horrible now. One game is just ruining them completely.
Exactly.
But I was just shocked by the fact that the rush defense has been pretty good against some pretty decent running backs all season, yet when it really mattered for the defense to be locked in, they weren't. And so, like, I wanted, even if, I don't know. I was just a little shocked by how LJ Martin was just going everywhere with him. And, I mean, TCU and
can I throw something at you?
Had pretty similar rushing stats. TCU tried 34 times, BYU 39. I think it just shows even the secondary was getting a little cooked out there because he had 296 passing yards. So that's how you get the ball down the field. Okay, we're at the 10-yard line, ready to score. What are we going to do? Give it to LJ Martin. He's going to run it in for these touchdowns because you know that the D-line is not going to stop him.
I want to throw something at you. Last week, Iowa State had a running back go for 100 yards. This week, we saw the run defense get sliced up. Should there be growing concern? Right? I don't think they're a bad run defense, but this is 2 weeks in a row that I have been displeased with. And I don't know that last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago now at this point. I don't know if they just got sliced up. It was a very weird feeling, 100 yards from, I think, Carson Henson was his name. But they did let up 100 yards to him. And now this game. Is this something that we should monitor? Or are we still going to just say, hey, not much to worry about?
I'm not going to worry about it yet. I like 3 strikes and you're out. So I think let's see what happens this weekend. And then I'll make a different opinion. But I feel like it also just could be the coaches kind of losing the locker room a little bit.
I have this theory that we try to not talk about coaching when it comes to TCU, but no matter what conversation we have, it all seems to come back to coaching.
And it's funny because one of the first things I said on this podcast was talking about Deion Sanders, how they think that they were the better team against TCU, yet lost. And I feel like that has been a trend in a lot of TCU's losses. They probably weren't the better team against BYU. So I kind of understand that. But against Iowa State, I think TCU is definitely the better team. Against Arizona State, I thought TCU and Arizona State were pretty evenly matched, in my opinion. But TCU did blow a 17-0 lead. So that was a little tragic. Yes. But
I think that Iowa State, going in, I think that I would say, and maybe walking out, depending on how you want to look at the Iowa State game. You may say TCU played better and just made critical mistakes. One could say that. I think Kansas State outplayed them, though I thought that they would be better. Road game, in my opinion, was the big thing that swayed that. Arizona State, I was so fresh here at that time. I don't know. I thought the Arizona State was the better team, to be honest. But very close, like you said. I wasn't fully dove into TCU football at that time. I think I'd only covered one game. So I was still very fresh, and I was more so familiar with guys like Levitt and Arizona State from their run already. So, but no, it's a valid point that this is, in my opinion, the first game that they were outmatched, and we saw what happened.
We're clearly outmatched. I think the other games it kind of was a toss up, but very clearly outmatched here.
3 touchdowns in this game. And I feel like that isn't a great indicator of where this team is versus BYU. It's not surprising. I see those 3 touchdowns. I don't say, man, I can't believe that happened. I just say, that's LJ Martin. And that is Sarah's stat of the week. So let's move forward because Utah versus Texas happened 2 times this week. And we're going to make it a third on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Now, maybe you want to go to the Carter for the last home game of the season versus Cincinnati. If you're still feeling like you're in the school spirit, you can go to Gametime and get a ticket for that. Maybe you aren't feeling like you're in the spirit and you don't even want to watch the game. Maybe you're feeling like your Saturdays are better used doing something else completely. Go ahead and go to Gametime. It's not just sporting events. It's not just college football or pro football. It's not just Cowboys and Horned Frogs. It's also ballet. It's theater. It's comedy. It's anything that you need a ticket to be honest. If you need a ticket, go to Gametime. And my favorite thing about Gametime is it doesn't do all the smoke and mirrors. It doesn't do all of the tricks. Put all of that to the side. Tell me exactly how much it's going to be before I click buy. The all-in pricing is by far my favorite part of Gametime, and if you go there, it will be your favorite too. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege and you get $20 off your first purchase if you are new to Gametime. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. It's Utah versus Texas. It was Utah, the university, Utah versus Baylor. And it was BYU versus TCU. And we're going to go ahead and peel that curtain back and tell you guys how it all went down. But I texted Sarah. I said, I think this is who I'm going with for my biggest winner. It's between BYU and Utah. And I was like, hey, I never give recommendations, but I was saying I just really want to hear about the temperament. I want to hear about the temperature out there in Waco. Can you talk about Baylor for me? And she said, how about we just do Utah versus Baylor? So my biggest winners are Utah and BYU. And for BYU, you got your groove back, right? So you lose a big game to Texas Tech. And honestly, it's the worst you've looked all year. And what a lot of people probably don't know if you're not paying attention to national discourse around BYU is people are questioning their validity. Because they're looking like every game you win close. You're gritting out games, even games where you feel like you shouldn't be gritting out. You're gritting those games out. And at least in college football, this is how it works. When you win a bunch of games close, people question if you're really that good, especially if you're not playing top 10 teams every week. But when you're beating teams by 40, 50 points, 30 points, then we start to believe in you. BYU came in and absolutely spanked TCU. And you know what? They beat them by 31.
A statement. It kind of, as I digest before I went to sleep, I think BYU kind of needed to make this statement to be like, hey, we just lost to Texas Tech, and you might not think we're valid, but we're going to stomp on TCU and show you exactly why we are valid.
Yeah, so, that is why they are my biggest winner.
Yeah.
That right there, plus the fact that Cincinnati lost. Now, Cincinnati's loss it hurts Cincinnati way more than I think it helps BYU. BYU is still trying to avoid being in a 2-loss tie with like 3-4 teams. But if Cincinnati would have won and then they beat BYU, they would have pretty much, I'm not guaranteed it, but they would have went far into guaranteeing their spot in the Big 12 championship. Right now, they still need a lot of help even if they beat BYU. So that's why they would have been my biggest loser. But BYU gets helped by the fact that Cincinnati lost. So even a loss to Cincinnati feels a lot different because you have a huge log jam with them, Arizona State, Cincinnati, and Utah as something to fall back on. Utah, on the other hand, is my biggest winner because they just absolutely smashed Baylor. And we talk about how BYU is the we win close team. Utah is the we win big team. That's what Utah does, right? So BYU's biggest margin of victory in an FBS game was last week versus TCU, as Sarah mentioned, the statement that you needed. Meanwhile, you're looking at Utah. They beat UCLA by 33. They beat Wyoming by 25. They lost to Texas Tech big. They beat West Virginia by 34. They beat Arizona State by 32. You lose to BYU by only 3. You come in, you beat Colorado 53-7. You beat Cincinnati, who was 17th in the country at that time, 45-14. You just beat Baylor 55-28. As I'm going through it, they don't have a single 1-score victory. They don't have a single 2-score victory as you're going through it. They have 20-point victories. That is absolutely insane. I'm trying to look. Every single game that they've won by at least 3 touchdowns. That's what Utah does. So when they are looking, and I don't know if it's going to help them because it's kind of weird in the back end, but when you're talking about how teams are perceived, there's a reason that 2-loss Utah is right behind 1-loss BYU, because Utah spanks everybody that they play and they beat, right? They have a couple of losses, but they spank everybody that they beat. BYU inches by most of their teams. That's the difference between the 2 Utah teams, but they both won, and that's why they're my biggest winners this week.
Yeah, and you got the good part talking about the winners, whereas Utah kind of destroyed Texas and TCU and Baylor. And so that's what I'm here to talk about, the 2 losers of this equation of TCU and Baylor. I also work in the Baylor market for work, so our station covers Baylor, so I get a lot of that information just through my daily life. But
Time out. Did you see the AD's outfit? Was it the AD?
No, he left.
Yeah, the one who got fired, right? For putting his hands on somebody. Oh my God, he had a crazy outfit. I'll have to find it.
No, I didn't.
I'm gonna try to look for it. If I can find it, I'll pull it up. But oh my God, the fit was crazy. He was talking to Dave Aranda.
That's funny. But looking at how Baylor season's going and how TCU season's going, I feel like these 2 teams are in very similar situations. It's no doubt that Baylor has a lot of talent on offense and defense, and so does TCU, yet that's not translating on the field at all. And Aranda is supposed to be, he's been praised as this defensive guy, like, he's supposed to think and make his defense really good, but that's not something we've seen. And I feel like that defense uncertainty is kind of something we've seen on offense a little bit. If Baylor offense and TCU's defense combined to make a team, I feel like they would be leading the Big 12, but unfortunately that can't happen. These 2 teams got smacked by Utah. There was actually I think Baylor fans were so fed up by the loss that they all started taking off their shirts and slinging them around like this, like a cowboy. I've seen it all over my Twitter and TikTok. Not sure what that's about. Somebody in the comments, please let me know what started this, because I would love to find out. But I think that there kind of is, a bright sign. Baylor students seem to be absorbing the failure of a season a lot better than TCU fans, because TCU fans just don't show up, and you can see that when you look out in the stadium and see that no one's there.
Yeah. I found it. Hold on. Just keep talking. I found the picture. I know this sounds ridiculous, but the outfit is going to be worth it. So Drake told the host of Locked On Big 12 Squad Show and Locked On Big 12, he brought this to our attention, and it was terrible. Okay. It's a terrible outfit. It's something that I hope I never see you wearing. This is his outfit. You see those shoes? See those pants? See,
I know this is a sports podcast, but maybe we need to start talking about sports fashion.
This is terrible.
In the podcast.
This is terrible, and I blame Drake. I'm showing anybody from Baylor this, and by anybody from Baylor, Cam's already had it. Drake's had it. So you're the last person on the list. But the point is, this is a horrendous outfit, and I don't know where he was trying to go. If I took a picture of every single level of this outfit, you would say that's going different places.
I think he's just going through something right now.
Well, yeah, I think so too.
I think he's going through something right now with all the news that he's stepping down, and now the SEC is going to have more of a say in the college football playoffs. So that probably means the Big 12 is going to get snubbed some more.
You're getting one team. No, I'm not. No, I'm just saying one team. Go ahead. I'm not telling you wait. I think they're going to get one team. So I wasn't trying. My bad. I wasn't trying to cut you off. I accidentally did. But
you're good.
Yeah, I think one team is what they're going to get. And if you want to hear more about that, check out tomorrow's episode of the Big 12 Squad Show, in which we talk all about what the college football playoff rankings are. So by the time you hear this, it'll already be up. But we'll be discussing that in greater length on the Big 12 Squad Show. So in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.